Hello, everyone, and welcome to Elder Law Today. I'm the producer of the show, Robert Allen, and I'd like to introduce the host of Elder Law Today, Yael Hauptman.
Thanks very much, Robert. And what we're going to talk about today is what I call the pitfalls of not having a will. And again, this is a topic which over the last couple of months I've had a number of calls that have come in with this scenario. A variation, but a common scenario. Somebody dies, mom or dad dies without a will, and the family very quickly discovers that the assets do not pass in the manner in which they were thinking they ought to pass. And here's what happens. And basically, Robert, when somebody doesn't have a will, every state has a set of laws that are called intestacy laws. And basically, it's a series of instructions as to what happens with somebody's property where they didn't leave written instructions of their own. So the state steps in and says, all right, we're going to set up a sequence as to where these assets go. And it starts out with generally a combination of spouse, children, and parents. But people very quickly find out that the assets don't go where they want them to go. For example, I've had a number of scenarios where the assets go to children, or some of them go to children, and not to the surviving spouse, and the children are minors. So now the children come into these assets, and it requires oftentimes a guardianship being set up, because the court won't allow this money to be just distributed to the parents, to the surviving parent, I should say. And so there's an added court process, and that's an expense. Another scenario is where there's a second marriage. So there are kids from first marriages. So let's say the husband dies, and he didn't set up a will saying what he wanted to do with the property. And so let's say he wanted it all to go to the surviving spouse because maybe he gave his kids, an inheritance already. But under New Jersey, it isn't all going to go to the surviving spouse. Some of it's going to go to the kids. And what happens if his wife really needs the money for long-term care? Right? So very quickly find out that the wife doesn't have as much as she thought she had and really wasn't set up properly. And the kids may not be in a position, or they may not want to give those assets back. So, those are some really common pitfalls that we see.
And so each state writes their own rules in regarding that. So it could, one state, a neighboring state would have totally different rules when it comes to that.
That's true.
Now, why would a state, make a law that says it wouldn't pass to the spouse but to the children? I mean,
well, it's not that it wouldn't pass to the spouse.
Or is that a certain
percentage? The spouse
percentage
will get
of it?
some of it, but it may not be all of it, and it may not be the percentage that they think it's appropriate,
right,
or that it ought to be, because it's a personal preference.
Sure.
There are also scenarios where the assets, not all the assets are going to pass under the intestacy laws, because there may be life insurance, there may be retirement accounts, and those accounts are going to go to named beneficiaries. And if the husband didn't change the named beneficiary, let's say to the wife, and I had one of these cases a number of years ago, which I wrote about a while back on my blog, where a husband, second marriage, he divorced his first wife, and there was a period of maybe 5 or 10 years in between first and second marriage in which he changed the beneficiaries under his retirement plans to his daughters. And then he got married, and he didn't change the beneficiary forms back
to his new
wife. He wanted to, and he went to the attorney who was like the neighborhood attorney that did his closing, but really wasn't, an elder or estate planning attorney. And he wrote up a list of his assets. And he said, this I want to go to my wife, this I want to go to my daughters, and so on and so forth. And he wrote that he wanted his 401k to go to his wife. And the lawyer put it right in the will. Okay? He did have a will. And he put it in the will. But it isn't controlled by the will. And so he never changed the beneficiary forms. Same thing without a will. The intestacy laws will not cover that retirement account. So the wife may be thinking she's getting the retirement account when in fact she's not, because the beneficiary was never changed. And then on top of that, he doesn't have a will, and so the wife isn't even going to get everything that passes under the intestacy laws. She's going to get less. So I mean, that's it's something that could happen.
So then in any case, a named beneficiary always takes precedence over what's in a will?
In those types of assets, yes, in what we call contract property.
So what else would they cover? So things like a retirement account has it. Obviously, life insurance.
Right.
Are there other types of things that would have?
There are payable on death accounts, transfer on death accounts. So a lot of times people have accounts set up in their bank. So they have a CD. It's payable on death to child A or child B. And a lot of older clients, they have in their mind set up, I have all my assets, they're all lined up in different CDs, and I want this CD to go to this person, that CD to go to that person, and so on and so forth. But then they go on and live their life, and they may cash in a CD because they need it. And if that just happened to be the CD that was payable to A, just because it matured and he cashed it in, and then he dies, well, A won't get that. And if that happens to be to the spouse, then the spouse isn't going to get it. So the idea is that there really isn't any thought in terms of what happens when I die and what am I leaving or not leaving to my loved ones. And so what happens is results that nobody really intended occur, and those are the worst scenarios, because now the money, the assets aren't going to be going to support whoever needs them.
Right. And a will can be modified an infinite amount of times.
As long as you have the capacity, as long as you're competent to do it, yeah.
Yeah. It's just a matter of doing it. And like we've talked about countless times on the show, it's all about planning ahead, because now here it is. You don't have a will. The person just passed away. You're dealing with the emotional aspect of death,
right?
And now you're dealing with the financial aspect of it as well, and having to deal with the government, whether it be state or otherwise, when you knew the person's intentions and all they had to do was put it in writing in a will, and none of that would...
I'll give you one final scenario, Robert. When you have real estate, and we sometimes have clients who have real estate in different states, without a will, I can tell you in New Jersey, if I have a non-resident who owns real estate in New Jersey, and so let's say that person was a resident of California and dies without a will, the intestacy laws of New Jersey will control how that real estate in New Jersey will pass. And that could be very differently than the intestacy laws in California. So you'll end up with different people taking different percentages. Which is just based on the whim of the law. With the law says it provides you with the ability to provide a written plan. If you don't exercise that opportunity, then the government's going to make that decision for you, and they're making it arbitrarily. In creating the law, the politicians, the legislators, have tried to sit down and figure out what would most people want. But in any one particular case, what you want, it can be, and very often is, different than what I want.
Right.
And so you're really leaving it to chance, in essence.
Yeah, and it's, as we've seen so many times, you can't leave it to chance. It has to be something that is prepared for, and I think
absolutely, Robert. As you said, I mean, the common theme in all this and in all our shows is you gotta plan ahead. You've got to take control of your own life, and especially at this stage of your life, when so much is at stake. You have the opportunity to grasp control, put together a plan. If you don't exercise that right, somebody else is going to be making those decisions for you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Robert. And I think that wraps up show number 17. We'll see you again for show 18.